Breaking news, the Arizona Cardinals have fired head coach Jonathan Gannon, and we are live here on PHNX Cardinals from Studio K, brought to you by our friends at Circle K. And we're going to head right out to Bo Brack at the Cardinals training facility, where he was out there interviewing players and getting the feel of things as this news came down. Bo, how are you, and what's the feeling out of the facility right now?
Yeah, we'll just go with the latter there. I don't think anybody cares how your boy's doing this morning as we put the finishing touches on a brutal 2025 season. Yesterday, the Cardinals finished tied with the worst record in the league. So, you're bracing for impact. That there was some uncertainty, surrounding this and the future of head coach Jonathan Gannon. And it didn't look like the ownership could find a path forward as far as, the performance, as far as the team went with wins and losses. Gannon finishes his tenure, 15-36 through 3 seasons. Cardinals made this decision just a few minutes ago. Multiple reports are saying that Gannon is out, but Monti Ossenfort is going to spearhead finding a new head coach, a second head coach for Monti under his tenure, which also started 3 off seasons ago.
What do you think changed over the last 48, 24 hours, where there was belief that Jonathan Gannon very well could still be in this seat and have his Monday press conference? I mean, even up until the news from Adam Schefter, there felt like some belief that he'd still be the head coach of this team.
Yeah, I don't think this was a decision that Michael Bidwill took lightly. This was something I'm sure that was painstaking for him, as far as having to part ways with somebody like Jonathan Gannon, who he had so much respect for and wanted to find a reason to kind of push him through to a 4th season. But the final month for this team was just so brutal. They finished the season on a 9-game losing skid, and the games were just not competitive. You didn't see, a whole lot of tight scores there, outside of a Tampa Bay loss and a loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But other than that, it was a tough go of it for the final couple months there. So I think Michael Bidwill saw that. I think he saw the outcry from the fan base. A lot of, long tenured season ticket holders were making their voice heard on social media. The unfortunate post yesterday, celebrating Jonathan Gannon's birthday, it was just a horse show in the comments, and you continue to see that. And I think they understood that they were going to be in for a tumultuous offseason if they just stayed with the status quo at head coach.
All right, I'm going to ditch the newsiness here. It's felt a little too much like, look, as a lifelong fan of this team, having watched since '88, this was the most abysmal season I think I've had to suffer through, coming through with the expectations and everything, the hopes for playoffs, the fact that they had the most losses in a single season. They gave up the most points a Cardinals team ever gave up. The fact that this was even a consideration that he may stay is insane to me. This felt like the only decision that really could be made in the end, simply because this team could not put their fan base through another year of this with how bad things had turned for them. I mean, it seemed like players were still speaking highly of Gannon when you were talking with him earlier today. Did that feel like just kind of platitudes, or is this a group that you think still believed in him and it was just the fans that had turned? Because I was done with this, Bo.
No, and I think that there is 2 very different camps here, right? I mean, the people that were in the locker room that Gannon had put in position to find success, to give, jobs at this level. I think that they're appreciative of it, but at the same time, I think everybody in this building, anybody in this league understands, this is a results business. And as far as if it were to happen and we didn't get the news just a few minutes ago, it would have been, there's very little precedent for it. I mean, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars gave Gus Bradley 4th season after just winning 12 wins, but there are a lot of head coaches with the win percentage that Gannon has that got granted a 4th season. And as far as just, track records or things that would show that there's success after that, I think that there's no precedent for that.
Well, I think the thing that did it for me was seeing Raheem Morris get fired and realizing that he had more wins in the last 2 seasons than Gannon did in all 3 that he coached here in Arizona. Do you think that it still spells the end for Kyler Murray? I know there was some talk that, well, if there was a coaching change from some national reports, that maybe you could see K1 stay. I feel like this has to be a complete fresh start, right, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think I'm very skeptical that there could be some sort of recontracting there. I think the people remaining in this building, and we'll ask that question when we do talk to Monty and Bidwell here at noon. But I think that the person that exited today was probably, the person that would really kind of embrace that. So no, it does kind of feel that's going to become an inevitable divorce, and we'll see, how that goes, whether it's via trade or whether it's the team having to maybe even release the quarterback.
Where do you go from here, Bo? I mean, Monti Ossenfort is going to lead this charge. You've have not had success in your last two hires. You're now likely searching for a quarterback. What are you thinking at this moment? What are you hearing?
It's a dangerous game. Let's just say that, right? Having to have a full facelift as far as, the voice in that locker room, your head coach, and then also have to replace potentially the most important position in all of sports on the fly, and kind of try to find, somebody that can be either the status quo or an upgrade. I mean, that is a tough task. And then to do it without, your lead man in charge. Where do you turn? I mean, Gannon now becomes the sixth coach fired. We saw one that was a two-time, head coach of the year, and Kevin Stefanski shown the door. You got Raheem Morris, who I think, as you mentioned, the record, it was 8-9 and 8-9 last two seasons. We'll see, if he gets any interviews here, but there are viable candidates out there. Mike McCarthy, who you could get right to work on, a guy who has been, sitting on the sidelines after being, excused by the Cowboys over a season ago. Is he somebody very similar record as Sean Payton, but doesn't get as much maybe love for that? But there are options. Brian Flores, what he was able to do, what he's done as far as that Vikings defense, somebody that might merit a second go around, and a guy that Johnny Venerable has been kind of pounding the table for, that if this happened, staying within the division and taking away from a strength of the San Francisco 49ers and giving Robert Saleh a potential second opportunity as a head coach.
Can you really go defense, though? I mean, if you're going to be bringing in a guy that you hope to be the quarterback of the future, you're trying to figure out where you're going to go. You just had a defensive-minded head coach. In today's NFL, do you really think you can go defense again and hope whatever offensive coordinator you bring in can be the guy that helped craft whatever offensive scheme and help mold whatever quarterback you bring in here?
Yeah, I mean, if you're thinking offensively, I think you stick with McCarthy. If you continue there, if you're looking for the trendy coordinators, like this cycle, there aren't any Ben Johnsons, unfortunately. But one of the hot names, of course, the top team in the NFC that resides in your division, once again, taking away from a strength of a divisional rival, Clint Kubiak would be an option too. But you would be going with somebody that is unproven as far as leading a team. Sure, lots of time spent in the league as far as being a play caller. Of course, his dad, obviously, lots of time as a successful head coach, and I'm sure lots of just connections throughout the league. But I think the team is going to be looking for. I think the fan base is not wanting to embrace a first year guy. So that's what Kubiak, I think, would present some challenges right there.
For those of you wondering, Johnny Venerable will join Bo this afternoon. He's busy finishing his steak right now, but I'm sure he'll have plenty of big takes to give you here this afternoon. We've got some in the chat saying, no Mike McCarthy, please. Others all in on the idea of McCarthy. Some people suggesting if Harbaugh gets canned with the Ravens, that's a guy to look at. I think it's probably far too early to start considering specific names, but the fan base seems, at least the chatter, to be happy with the move. But I think that is only something that will last the next few days.
Hey, Bo, I got a question real fast. First time caller. Do you think that the carousel that's going on right now had anything to do with it? Because we're seeing so many coaches get fired.
Yeah, we're seeing guys with some, pretty impressive resumes, guys that are shown the door despite some impressive feats. Maybe. I mean, that's something I think we should ask, in the next 90 minutes when we get the opportunity to talk to Monti Ossenfort and Michael Bidwill. Did that play a role? I mean, when we look at the timeline today, guys, I mean, Gannon showed up at the facility at 5:30. It was business as usual. I think he was expecting and talking to a lot of his players in exit interviews. And as you mentioned, Espo, I talked to guys from Trey McBride to Paris Johnson Jr., Darius Robinson, who were all kind of giving, saying that Jonathan Gannon, they believed he needed another season. And then there's players meeting was at 10 a.m. And the news broke out shortly after that. So, just kind of looking at that timeline, I don't know. I think when you just kind of look at it overall, Shane, it was just Bidwell's hand was kind of forced as far as having to make this decision. He couldn't, I think, find a path forward this offseason without really the fan base looking at him and leadership saying that they dismissed what they wanted as far as the head coach and the leader of this franchise. They felt like the 15-36, the lopsided losses, those were non-negotiables going forward, and this didn't see a path forward.
I feel like Daewoo in the chat asked an interesting question, and I was wondering the same thing. He says, did Bidwell and Ossenfort wait until they saw certain names get fired to bring them in, Stefanski, or maybe to see how other teams were moving with disappointing seasons with Morris? You think that weighed into this decision? Pure speculation, obviously.
Yeah,
but.
yeah. I mean, I think that played very little role, if any, when you just kind of look at when you put it on paper, when you're trying to argue this in a court of law, when you're trying to find evidence to back up stay or go. I think as far as just if you were see somebody just hit the open market, there's no guarantees that you're going to land them. The team has traditionally not been one of those teams that have been aggressive as far as getting their guy. They're usually one of the teams that is making the last hire in the coaching cycle, good or bad. I mean, it was BA was the last hire in his cycle, Arians and, I think Wilkes, Kingsbury, they were not the guys that were at the forefront of the coaching carousel, and Gannon himself as well. So it would be out of character for this organization. So like to say, hey, like that was the final straw that they saw Stefanski or Raheem Morris hit the market, that they were just like, okay, let's pull the trigger and turn our focus that way. I doubt it.
If you're Monti Ossenfort, is this another rebuild? Like, are we going to have to suffer through the idea of, well, give us, 2-3 years to go through another rebuild and try to figure out and establish an identity? Because I just don't think the fan base can deal with that, nor will they at this point.
And I agree with that. I think it does, though, create a bit of grace. It does maybe lengthen his leash a little bit, but look, they have to show obviously some improvement between this season and next season. As we said, the hurdles that are standing in front of you as far as that goes, quarterback, the questions surrounding that position, and then rebuilding the staff, with guys that are going to want to continue to help add on to the players that they've drafted and developed in this organization, signed to big contracts. I would say it's a bit of a remodel. It's not a full gut job. It's not tearing it down to the studs. That was the rebuild. That's what they took on in 2023. And they wanted to see forward with this brain trust, and just their hands were tied at this point. But I think they're going to continue to remodel this, reshape this. And unfortunately, you can't just put the entire rebuild in the rearview mirror at this point. But the cupboard isn't completely barren. You've got some talented players in this locker room now that you can build on top of, and you're going to be equipped with the third overall pick, second overall pick in the second round, and then the first overall pick in the third round. You're going to have some draft capital to do some damage.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a remodel. When you're going to go through that, you got to turn to a construction group that has experience. Do you have to turn to a head coach that has experience? Chris says, I think JV has been spot on. Someone with head coaching experience is what they need. I tend to agree with that. If you're going to go through a remodel here, you need to have somebody with their hands on the wheel that's done it before. You can't have somebody trying to learn on the job while you're still trying to figure out how to piece this damn thing back together.
No doubt about it. I think that's really the appetite for, hey, let's see what this guy's about. This trendy up and comer. I see Joe Brady in the chat. Of course, former co-offensive coordinator for LSU. didn't work out in Carolina, as many coaches have learned. That's a tough place to go and find success. And then in Buffalo, he's found some success working alongside Josh Allen, which can be an easy thing, right? But like as far as the appetite for the first year guys, there's not much of it. I think people would much rather. And to your point, I hear the defensive thing, but I think solid. When you talk about just leader of men, that's what you're going to look for, because of course you got to get this offensive play caller right, regardless if it's your head guy or if it's a coordinator.
To quell some of the people in the chat's fears, yes, this means Drew Petzing is likely gone too.
Yep.
They're not firing Jonathan Gannon and keeping Drew Petzing.
His contract is over. It's done.
Yeah.
So
they're not re-signing him. Don't you worry.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd imagine that this is a complete rebuild of the coaching staff. There won't be holdovers. We'll find out all the details at noon. But Bo, when you were talking with the players before this, it didn't seem like they had any clue that this was coming. This came as a surprise to them, as I imagine it probably came as a surprise to Gannon today.
Yeah, I mean, you heard when I was talking to like Trey McBride and talked a bit in the past tense, and it kind of raised my eyebrows. But I don't think so. I think they were probably informed at 10 a.m. During the players' meeting. Any
reactions? I know on this show you tend to be the calmer hand. Johnny tends to be the one with takes. But is there anything that you want to get off your chest with all this that you've seen this year that this moment it kind of either makes you feel better about what's going on or what your thoughts are in general?
No, I mean, I think you need to, as a fan, take a little solace in the fact that Michael Bidwill listened to you. He wasn't going to just dismiss what the fans who were, not renewing season tickets in a large capacity. They were losing a ton of those. He looked at it and did the calculus on it and realized that this was the only move to be made. All that being said, I think everybody understands the relationship that we had with Coach Gannon on this show. We were fortunate enough to talk to him in 3 different occurrences, and he's a good man, and you never like to see this for anybody. He was somebody that wanted to embrace Phoenix and make it football and the NFL work in the Valley. But, when you go 15-36 and in the last month, how it transpired, it's just one of those things where there was just no path forward. So I think as a fan of the Arizona Cardinals, you have to understand that the organization is hearing you and is willing to make a necessary change this offseason to try to pivot to a different direction and find the right way.
According to Ian Rappaport, Jonathan Gannon had the opportunity to inform his players he'd been fired, explaining to them that this is another example of adversity. And quote, Rappaport says, sounded like it was a powerful final message. So to your point, Jonathan Gannon, from all accounts and from our experience with him, a very, very good guy and tried to be a stand-up leader to the very end. What I do wonder, though, Bo, is it always felt like in the press conferences that you covered that there was never any admission of how bad things were or how difficult things were that acknowledged what the fans were feeling. It was always stick with us, these kind of things. Do you think that played any factor too, that there wasn't any kind of contrition in those press conferences that at least could, I hate to say it, but pacify the fan base in some way?
Sure. No, I think that definitely played a role in it. Not significant, but I think where you look at this, it just took somebody who had, I think a very high approval rating going into this season, and it tanked it by not having, more transparent, vulnerable conversations about what went wrong. And, having situations like San Francisco early in the season, saying Drew Petzing called his best game in that situation when the team, scored, 1 point less than the Niners. I think they lost that game 15-14, or saying, I love the play call in overtime, 4th and 4, a bomb to somebody like Xavier Weaver, who has less than 10 targets. That's stuff that I think the fan base just did not appreciate. And then you have to understand that. And I think that definitely played a role as far as their outrage at the idea of him potentially getting a fourth season. So yeah, no doubt about it. That is something that I think I understand what the approach was. I think it was from trying to protect his guys, from his coaching staff to his players, and never throwing anybody under the bus publicly. But it was tough for the fan base to. There was a different way to probably do it with not losing the fan base and kind of turning them off like it did.
Jacob in the chat says not firing Drew Petzing cost him his job, and I tend to agree with that. I mean, I feel like if he had admitted, hey, this isn't going the way we want, the offense doesn't look the way we want, we're going to have to make a move. He stayed loyal to Drew Petzing, and it feels like that really cost him in the end with leadership.
No doubt about it. And it's a talking point that I think Johnny Venerable has kind of maintained, dating back to this offseason, like last year this time. And when, news was leaking out that they were going to stay the status quo and for continuity purposes, coming off a bit of a lackluster offensive performance, he said that this could be, a fatal blow potentially. And it was. I mean, being loyal to a fault. As far as these coordinators, when you have a team that suffered a 3-14 season and there were no in-season moves, people can, look at that a little sideways, and understandably. I mean, you look at the team that just beat you by 17-28 earlier in the season, the Los Angeles Rams, they weren't content with their special teams. You go back to last offseason, the Seahawks, they were coming off a 10-win season, sure, on the outside looking in of the postseason, but they said their offense wasn't good enough. They make a change at offensive coordinator. They bring in Kubiak. They pivot off Geno Smith, and they give Sam Darnold a $100 million deal, and they're the top seed in the NFC West. That rolling of the dice, it proved to be beneficial for them, where the rolling of the dice and saying, hey, we're going to do this based on continuity, and I believe in this guy, but nothing points to true reason why, bit him in the backside, and it was loyal to a fault, and it was kind of the probably the main reason for why we're talking about this exit today.
Put on a tinfoil hat with me for a second.
Yeah.
You think that the fact that Cliff Kingsbury's name's being mentioned for head coaching availabilities, and the fact that would take that money off the books for Bidwill could play part in this, that he was a little bit more comfortable with the thought of having to pay Jonathan Gannon out?
I mean, I think there's some offsetting money already for him being an OC the last 2 seasons that have made that a little bit easier. Jonathan Jones, great reporter, insider for CBS Sports, did mention that Bidwill might hesitate at paying 3 coaches in some capacity. But I think that Cliff has some good representation that's always putting his name in the coaching cycle. And it's more maybe a testament, if we'll call it that, of his representation, putting his name in the news cycle and getting some interviews, despite, the Commanders' tough season as well.
All right, before we let you get back to the facility and get ready for the press conference, let's take a look at some of the super chats that have come in throughout the show. Shane, if we could cue some of those up. Libertarian Sasquatch says, here are my final thoughts on JG. Was way too loyal to his horrible staff, and it cost him his job. New head coach is good for all our young players. I think that's a fair assessment and sums up a lot of what we've said here. Let's take a look at the next.
I think that's key. I think that this is going to be a very appealing job. The ESPN analysts had done this a couple months ago, as far as just kind of reading the tea leaves, what openings could happen, and what would be the most, appealing spot. Cardinals were second only to the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Bengals, obviously, they've got the starting quarterback situation figured out, but looks like Zach Taylor's coming back. So guess who's the most appealing spot now, baby? Arizona Cardinals up 1, and we'll see. But look, Paris Johnson Jr. is a guy that he said his knee is doing a lot better, that landed him on IR. You've got a franchise left tackle there. You've got Trey McBride with 126 catches, just an absolute playmaker, 1,000-yard receiver, Michael Wilson. And I think Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to be very motivated to prove a lot of people wrong going forward. And then some really intriguing pieces on the defensive side that I think people are going to say, hey, there's a little bit more talent here than people realize. There's a lot more talent than 3 wins, that's for sure.
All right, next super chat, Shane, if you don't mind. We've got Toby. Next head coach needs to be an offensive mind, which we touched on, and I tend to agree. Bo, you seem a little bit more open to a defensive mind.
Yeah, I'm trying to just think if we are creating our filter here and our criteria, it's what do you value more? Is it a vet, a guy that has been a coach, or are you willing to go with the offensive mind, but more of a green head coach? Like, are you willing to go with the Kubiak, or is then I guess is Mike McCarthy your guy? Because I'm looking at who's to be available. Stefanski would also kind of check those boxes. So maybe you start to create your list that way.
All right. We've got Ben, the Cardinals fan, says, can't lie. I'll miss combine interviews with him. I think we all agree on that.
Same, brother.
Hopefully we'll get the new guy as well. Brian says, so Gannon fired, does that change the playoff mandate for next year? Changes the draft philosophy. 100% every player is on the table or trade down now.
Yeah, that's a great point. Benjamin Albright, who's a dialed-in insider, I know he's taking a lot of flack because he was pretty steadfast with his messaging. He thought Gannon was going to return, but things changed. The last month, I think, changed a lot. There was assurances made, back after the Niners blowout at State Farm Stadium, and it was something that they couldn't, see through, unfortunately. But he had mentioned as far as the playoff mandate in 26, and we'll see. I think maybe that gets a little bit less aggressive in 26 than it would have been with Gannon returning.
Is what I believe. Let's see what else we got here. As we've got Plex says, God is good. Keep K1, draft a right tackle, Super Bowl next year. I'd like some of what he has right there.
I just think that the wrong people were retained for that to potentially happen. And then also you got to keep in mind, all parties and their wishes. Is that something K1 would entertain?
Can't imagine so after being benched and the way this has gone over the last 7 years. I can't imagine. Chris says, thank the Lord. I just did daps of excitement around my office.
Look, I mean, if it was the other way around, if we got the opposite, I think you would have seen, the outrage and then maybe even amplified a little bit more than people who were celebrating, going around their office and dapping people up and maybe reconsidering keeping their season tickets.
That is a big factor in all this. Red says, young team need teachers on the new staff. Give me competence, no bad routes, high tackles, and procedural errors like fumbles into the end zone. Again, fundamentals were a big problem this year. You got to clean that up.
No doubt about it. I mean, you're going to have to really kind of clean some things up, some bad habits that appeared kind of out of nowhere this season. And I think of that Titans game, and it's like you kind of felt that was kind of the beginning of the end right there. Even though the first 2 wins of the season were didn't feel like wins, but losing to a hapless Titans team that was playing really just to kind of develop their quarterback and had no true winning aspirations, had a coach that was going to be fired a week later in Callahan. I mean, that was a damn near fatal blow. You couldn't scrub the stench off that loss.
All right, a couple more here to go. As Jalapeno says, keep Kyler, still Gus, our best option to win. Like we said, I highly doubt that he's going to want to stay, and we'll see what Monti Ossenfort has to say about the future at quarterback. That number 3 pick will help. AZ Cat G says, thank you to the fans and the season ticket holders. Yep. I think that pressure, as you mentioned, Bo, played a large part in this because money talks, and I think that's why JG walks.
There you go. That was poetic, what you just said.
I drop some bars every once in a while. AZ Moises says, we need an ass kicker, a leader who knows how to win the NFC West. This division is not for the weak of heart, and we need a Bruce Arians 2.0 ASAP.
No doubt about it. I think trying to narrow the gap, which was widened this season, where the team went 0-6, and there was just non-competitive performance after non-competitive performance in the division. That was probably a massive part of this. What could inspire any kind of hope going forward. when you just really regressed as far as being competitive in the division. I know you did it. You think they went like 3-3 last year, but those 3 wins were the only wins during the tenure under Gannon against the NFC West foes.
Thank you, Ryan, for $4.99 super chat. And then we've got Dat, who says, who do we want to interview for sure? What OC in mind? And do you guys want to draft at 3 or trade back? I want to see them at least be on the clock at 3 and see what quarterback is potentially available. I don't want to see them trade out of it unless you're getting a proven quarterback. And then we've talked about different names, but Bo, do you want to see them trade back at this point, or are we too early to talk about that?
Might need to trade up. We'll see what the Jets' wishes are. Jets have just a disastrous roster in place. Is it actually, is it infrastructure that's conducive to even bringing in a guy to develop? Some would say no. So is there a price tag for that second pick? Could you call their bluff and stand pat at 3 and still get him? But I think everything's on the table as far as the Cardinals in that 3rd overall pick. Do they go up or do they move down? It's going to be a huge pivotal offseason for Monti Ossenfort to really kind of find out like how to find Kyler Murray's successor. Is it the draft? Is it a veteran market? So that 3rd overall pick, a huge asset when it comes to the QB spot.
And then 2 more super chats here. Eric says, I really gave up watching after the Titans game. We probably should have fired the OC immediately after that game.
Yeah, hindsight 2020, but in real time, you felt like that. Felt like the writing was on the wall, and that's something I think that will be rethought as far as those who are leaving today. Should they've gone about it differently?
Then our final super chat here from Adrian says, already know Monty's words when addressing the QB issue. We will evaluate all options.
Pretty good bet right there. Pretty good bet. But I think there has to be a little bit of transparency in whether or not it's to the future of the quarterback position, but why things went down today and what are the next steps as far as this organization goes.
I want to welcome in a few new members of our supporters club, AZBG602. Thank you for joining, as well as Michael, who joined. If you want to become a supporter club member, hit that join button on YouTube right now. You're going to get exclusive content throughout this offseason from Johnny and Bo, covering everything from draft and the coaching search. They'll have that for you, plus their show. And you unlock some awesome emojis like Johnny chugging a beer as well.
Yeah, me smacking my forehead in disappointment, which was utilized quite a bit. Actually, both of them were. But I want to say this. I see this in the chat quite a bit as far as like the old cliches. We're going to cast like a large net and stuff like that. And I don't want to hear that again. I hope they aggressively pursue some of their top candidates and have a short list in mind.
Agreed. I think we have one final super chat that got in at the buzzer. Ryan says, which OC was Gannon considering to replace Petting? Any insight into that, or did they even get that far?
4:30, baby. Tune in at 4:30. Our guy JV, if he wants to reveal that, I'm sure he'll give you some insight on all that.
Well, that is right. You can catch Bo and Johnny at 4:30 p.m. on our regularly scheduled PHNX Cardinals show. You can follow the show at PHNX_Cardinals. You can follow Bo at Bo Brack and Johnny at Johnny Venerable. Any final thoughts, Bo, before we let you get back into the facility?
Just buckle up. It was already going to be a huge pivotal offseason, and things just ramped up with a new coaching search. We're going to own the offseason here on PHNX Cardinals. Don't look anywhere else because we're going to have you covered. Take this thing wire to wire all the way into kickoff in September. And, of course, we'll have you in good hands by then as well. But this is we were kind of bracing for impact on the opposite thing happened today. But now you've got the report and the team making it official. And now we look forward to what's next for the Arizona Cardinals organization.
Coming up in about 15 minutes right here on the same channel, I will have my show, Southwest Bias. We'll continue to discuss the Jonathan Gannon firing and much more. Make sure to keep up with at @PHNX_Cardinals and at Bo Brack for the 12 p.m. press conference. You get all the sound bites and all the insight coming from out there at the Cardinals facility. Bo, thanks for taking the time, and we will be back shortly. Hoy hoy.
We all silly like the mayor.